The scrapyard stretched for miles beyond the human colony. Old ships, broken machines, and twisted metal lay in heaps under a sky that never cleared. Smoke from melted wires hung in the air like a ghost, and the ground was always wet with oil. It was a place where no child dared to play, where no family dared to walk. The people of the colony whispered that the scrapyard was cursed. They said strange cries came from it at night, cries that were not human. In the center of this wasteland lived a girl. She was not human. Her skin carried a faint blue tone, her hair thin and tangled, her eyes pale and clouded. She was blind since birth, thrown away like broken trash, because her people had no use for her. She did not remember her parents. She only remembered hunger and cold. For years, she had survived by crawling through the piles of junk. Her hands learned to know metal from food. Her nose learned the smell of rotten and fresh. Every step was dangerous. Broken wires cut her feet. Sharp glass tore her hands. Still, she lived because she did not know how to stop. At night, she curled into the shadow of an old machine. The rain leaked through the gaps above, dripping on her face. She never saw the stars, but she heard the wind whisper through hollow pipes and imagined the sky. Sometimes she sang to herself in a low voice. It was the only way she could believe she was still alive. But the humans feared her. They called her the trash demon. Sometimes children threw stones from a distance, laughing when she cried out. Sometimes adults told stories that she cursed anyone who touched her. So no one came near. No one gave her food. She was alone in a world of shadows. Until one night, when the scrapyard was silent except for the drip of water and the echo of rats, a sound broke the dark. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, careful. The blind girl froze, her heart beating fast. She crouched low, clutching a piece of metal as a weapon, though she could not see who was coming. Her ears caught the crunch of boots on gravel, closer and closer. Then a voice, tired, low, almost kind. Is someone there? The human man stood at the edge of the trash piles. He had finished a long shift at the colony's factory, his hands black with grease, his shoulders heavy with exhaustion. But something had drawn him here, a faint cry he thought he had heard, a feeling he could not explain. Now his eyes scanned the piles of junk, searching for the source of the sound. And then he saw her, a thin shape crouched against an old pipe. Her hair tangled, her face streaked with dirt, her pale eyes staring but unseeing. She looked more like a ghost than a living being. For a moment, he thought she might be a hallucination born from his tired mind. But then she moved, trembling like a cornered animal. The man took a step closer. The girl hissed softly, clutching the sharp metal in her hand. "Stay back," she whispered in her broken voice. She expected another stone, another cruel laugh, another strike. But the man did not throw anything. Instead, he reached into his bag and pulled out half a loaf of bread. He placed it on the ground between them. The smell reached her nose. Her stomach twisted in hunger. But she did not trust it. Why would a human give her food? She waited, silent, listening for the trick. The man simply stepped back and sat on a broken crate. "I won't hurt you," he said quietly. "You sound hungry." The girl's hand shook, but at last she crawled forward. Her fingers brushed the bread, warm and real. She pulled it close and ate in small bites, afraid it would disappear. The man watched, his face unreadable. But inside him something stirred. This was no demon, no curse. Just a blind child, abandoned and forgotten. The night grew colder. The man rose to leave, but before he turned away, he spoke again. "I'll come back," he said. The girl tilted her head, not sure if she had heard right. No one ever promised to return to her. No one ever cared. But his footsteps faded into the night, and she was left with warmth in her hands and a new, dangerous feeling in her heart. Hope. The next day was heavy with clouds. Rain fell in soft waves over the colony, dripping into the scrapyard like tears. The blind alien girl crouched in her usual corner, the half loaf of bread already gone, her stomach still aching for more. She thought about the human man, the one who came at night. She wondered if he was real or only a dream her hungry mind created. Dreams had given her food before, dreams had given her warmth, but always they disappeared by morning. She touched the ground where the bread had been, just to be sure it was not a trick. The crumbs were real, the taste was still on her tongue. He had been real. The human man returned, his steps slower this time, his eyes cautious. He carried a small pack, and in his hand was a bottle of water. When she heard his boots on the gravel, her body froze again, her mind shouting that she should run, hide, vanish into the piles of metal. But her legs did not move. Her hunger was louder than her fear. He stopped a few feet away, lowering the bottle onto the ground. "I brought this," he said, his voice calm. The girl tilted her head, her pale eyes facing him, but not seeing. Her lips moved nervously. Why do you help me?" Her voice cracked, filled with suspicion. Humans had only ever thrown stones, spit, or words like poison. Why should this one be different? The man hesitated before answering. He did not know the reason himself. Maybe it was the sound of her broken whisper in the night. Maybe it was the way she clutched the bread like life itself. Or maybe it was the weight in his chest that told him no one deserved to be abandoned like this. He only said, "Because you need it." The words hung in the air, simple yet strange to her ears. She crawled forward slowly, her hands brushing the ground until she found the bottle. She unscrewed the cap with shaking fingers and drank, the cool water washing down her throat. For the first time in weeks, she felt alive again. She whispered something in her own alien tongue, a sound soft like music. The man could not understand, but he knew it was thanks. He sat down on the same crate as before, watching her with quiet eyes. "Do you live here alone?" he asked. The girl hugged the bottle close, as if it might be stolen. She nodded. "Alone," she said, her voice almost breaking. She told him in fragments how her people left her when she was small, how humans feared her, how she had no name because no one cared to give one. The man's jaw tightened. He had seen cruelty in the colony before, but this felt different, heavier. He thought of giving her a name, but the moment felt too fragile, too soon. He looked at her eyes, pale and empty like a frozen sky. "Can you see it all?" he asked. The girl turned her face down. "Darkness," she whispered, "always darkness." Her fingers tightened around the empty bread crust she still held like treasure. She had never seen light, never seen stars, never seen the face of the one who fed her. The man felt a strange ache inside. She was just a child, yet the world had written her off as trash. He wanted to change that, even if only in small steps. A sudden noise broke their fragile silence. Voices harsh and close. Two men from the colony walked along the scrapyard's edge, their lanterns cutting through the rain. "Patrol," the human whispered, his body tensing. The girl froze, shrinking into the shadows, her breath sharp and quick. She had been caught before, beaten for stealing scraps, chased out like a rat. If they saw her with him, there would be questions, punishment maybe worse. The man acted quickly, throwing a piece of cloth over her small frame, pushing her gently into the shadow of the pipe. "Stay quiet," he whispered. She obeyed, curling tight, listening to the heavy steps of the patrol as they passed. The guards laughed, talking about burning the scrapyard soon to keep the demon from spreading sickness. Her heart pounded, every word a knife in her chest. The man clenched his fists but stayed still until the patrol faded into the night. When it was safe, he uncovered her. Her body shook, not from cold but from fear. She whispered, "They will kill me." The man looked at her for a long time, then said firmly, "Not while I'm here." For the first time in her life, the girl felt something stronger than fear. It was not trust yet, not love, but a seed planted deep inside. The idea that maybe, just maybe, she was not alone anymore. The rain eased, leaving the scrapyard in silence once more. The man stood, adjusting the strap of his pack. "I'll come back again," he promised. Her hands reached out blindly as if trying to hold him there. But he stepped away, disappearing into the night once more. She sat alone, holding the bottle to her chest. Her heart beat differently now, faster, brighter. For the first time, She dared to imagine a future beyond the trash. And she whispered into the dark, "Please, come back." The days in the colony passed with the same rhythm. Machines roaring, steam rising, voices echoing in crowded streets. But inside the scrapyard, time moved differently, slow and heavy, filled with silence and shadows. The blind alien girl waited, her heart counting every sound, hoping to hear the human's footsteps again. She did not know his name. She only knew his voice, deep and calm, carrying something no one had ever given her before, kindness. On the third night, he returned, carrying more food tucked into his worn jacket. This time, the girl did not hide. She listened, then stepped out from behind the pipes, her pale eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. Her voice trembled as she said, "You came back." The man smiled faintly, setting the food down. "I told you I would." She crawled closer, touching the bread with careful fingers, then paused, her lips trembling. "Why?" she whispered again. "Why help me?" The human sat on the same broken crate, watching her with quiet eyes. He did not answer right away, his mind full of questions he asked himself. Why was he here when others turned away? Why did he feel this strange pull toward her, a stranger, an alien, a child of shadows? At last, he said softly, "Because no one else will." The girl chewed slowly, as if afraid the food might vanish from her hands. She turned her face toward him, blind eyes searching. "What is your name?" she asked in a small voice. He hesitated, then said, "My name is Aaron." She whispered it once, then again, as if tasting the sound, "Aaron." It was the first human name she had ever spoken with softness instead of fear. Aaron studied her thin frame, her skin bruised, her arms marked with small cuts from metal shards. "You need more than food," he murmured. "You need safety." But he knew the colony would never allow it, not openly. To them, she was a monster in the trash, a sickness waiting to spread. Yet looking at her, all Aaron saw was a child robbed of her life before it began. Over the following nights, Aaron came again and again, sometimes with bread, sometimes with fruit, sometimes only with water and warmth in his voice. He listened to her broken words, her half-stories told in pieces. She remembered being very small, carried once in gentle arms, then dropped into darkness she never escaped. She never had a name, never saw the stars, never heard a song except her own whisper. Aaron's chest grew tight each time she spoke. One night he said, "If you had a name, what would it be?" The girl froze, confusion on her face. "No name," she whispered. No one gave. Aaron leaned forward. "Then I'll give one." She gasped softly, her small hands clutching her chest. The idea was strange, terrifying, but beautiful. He thought for a moment, then said, "Lyra." The girl repeated it, slow and careful. "Lyra." The sound settled inside her like a seed planted in soil for the first time. She smiled, a weak, trembling smile, but real. From that night on, she was no longer just a blind girl in the trash. She was Lyra. But danger was never far. Word in the colony spread quickly, whispers that someone was sneaking food into the scrapyard. Children boasted they saw shadows moving. Adults grumbled about feeding demons. Aaron heard the talk at the factory, his stomach heavy with dread. He knew he had little time before someone followed him, before suspicion turned to violence. One evening, when he reached the scrapyard, Lyra sat shivering with cold, her body weaker than before. Her pale eyes turned toward him as soon as she heard his steps. "You came," she said, almost like a prayer. Aaron sat beside her this time, not on the crate, but on the ground, sharing her space. He handed her food, then spoke. "Lyra, if they find you, they will hurt you." Her small hands tightened, fear flashing across her face. She whispered, "Then you stop coming." Aaron's chest ached, but he shook his head. "No, I won't stop," he said firmly. "I'll find a way." Her lip trembled, a tear sliding down her dirty cheek. She reached out blindly, her hand brushing against his arm. It was the first time she had dared to touch him. Her fingers were small, trembling, but full of something deeper than fear. Trust. Aaron placed his hand gently over hers. In that moment, a silent promise formed between them. He would not abandon her. Not to hunger, not to darkness, not to the cruelty of others. Above them, the night sky stretched wide, the stars burning far away, unseen by Lyra's blind eyes. But for the first time in her life, she felt something brighter than sight. She felt connection, and though the scrapyard was still cold, still cursed in the whispers of the colony, in one hidden corner, warmth had taken root, a fragile bond between human and alien, a bond that would soon be tested by fire. The colony streets buzzed with rumor. Whispers traveled faster than trade ships, slipping from worker to worker, neighbor to neighbor. Someone was sneaking into the scrapyard at night, leaving food, leaving water. The old stories about the trash demon grew stronger. Some said it was growing bold. Others claimed it would curse the colony if not destroyed. Aaron heard these words every day while fixing machines, while standing in line for rations. Each time, his stomach grew heavier, fear pressing down on his chest. He knew they were speaking about Lyra, even if they did not know her name. If they found her, if they discovered what he had done, there would be no mercy. The colony feared what it did not understand, and it punished anything that threatened its order. Still, Aaron could not stay away. Each night he returned to the scrapyard, bringing small pieces of food, sometimes tools, sometimes cloth to keep her warm. Lyra waited for him, her ears sharp, her smile trembling but real when she heard his steps. He told her stories of the colony, of machines and skies, of stars she could not see. In return, she told him about the whispers she heard in the junkyard pipes, about the way rain sounded like music when it fell on metal. Their world was small, fragile, but in those moments, it was theirs alone. But the risk grew closer. One evening, Aaron noticed shadows following him from the factory. Two men from the patrol, their eyes sharp, their questions casual but heavy with suspicion. Working late again, Aaron, one asked, his smile too thin. Aaron forced a nod, hiding the tension in his voice. Machines don't fix themselves. They let him go. But he knew they would not stop watching. That night, when he reached the scrapyard, Lyra sensed his unease. Her pale eyes turned toward him, her voice soft. "What is wrong?" Aaron sat beside her, lowering his voice. "They are watching me," he whispered. "If they find out about you, they will come." Her small hands trembled, her breath catching. "Then you should not come back," she said quickly, though her voice cracked with fear. She did not want him to leave, but she did not want him to die because of her. Aaron shook his head, his jaw set. "I can't leave you here," he said. "Not while they plan to burn this place down." Lyra gasped, her fingers clutching his sleeve. "Burn," she whispered, the word heavy with terror. She had lived in the scrapyard all her life, the only home she had ever known. The thought of fire devouring it was too much. "They will kill me," she said, her voice shaking. Aaron placed his hand on hers, steady and strong. "Not if I can stop it." But he knew his words were not enough. The colony had already begun to prepare. Rumors of disease, curses, and danger had fueled anger. Soon the patrol would come with torches, not questions. Aaron returned to the factory the next day with a different plan. He searched through old storage bins, tools, and scrap parts, his hands moving quickly. His father had once been an engineer, building lenses and frames for workers who lost their sight. Aaron remembered those lessons, the way his father spoke about bending light, about giving vision to the weak. Among the discarded tools, he found a pair of cracked glasses, the frame bent but still usable. He tucked them away, his heart pounding with a dangerous hope. That night, he entered the scrapyard with something hidden under his coat. Lyra sat waiting, her face turned toward the sound of his steps. "You came back," she whispered, her relief clear. Aaron knelt in front of her, pulling the broken frame from his coat. "I have something for you," he said, his voice low. She tilted her head, confused, her blind eyes blinking. "What is it?" He hesitated, fear and hope twisting together inside him. "Glasses," he said softly, My father once used these to help people see. Maybe they can help you. Lira froze, her beat sharp. See, she whispered, as if the word itself was too heavy to carry. Her hands trembled as she reached forward, brushing against the cold frame. Aaron guided them gently onto her face, adjusting the bent metal until it sat right. For a long moment, nothing happened. Her pale eyes flickered, cloudy as always. Then she gasped, her whole body shaking. Shapes appeared, blurry at first, then clearer. The outline of Aaron's face, the dark shape of the junk around her, the faint glow of lantern light in the distance. She cried out, her voice breaking, "I can see." Her tears ran freely, her hands touching her face as if to prove it was real. Aaron watched in silence, his chest full of warmth he could not describe. The blind girl, once abandoned in the trash, was seeing the world for the first time. But even in that moment of joy, danger lingered close. The colony's whispers were louder, the patrols sharper, the fire closer. And Aaron knew, giving her sight had changed everything. Now she was not only a secret in the dark, she was a miracle. A miracle. A miracle the world might try to destroy. The scrapyard had never changed. Piles of metal, broken ships, rusted machines, all the same shadows and the same silence. But for Lyra, the world was no longer the same. For the first time in her life, she opened her eyes and shapes filled her darkness. Blurred at first, trembling like ghosts, but slowly turning into lines, edges, colors she had only imagined before. She blinked again and again, afraid the light might vanish. The sky above, gray and full of smoke, looked brighter than she ever dreamed. The twisted machines around her stood tall like giants, broken but proud. And in front of her was Aaron, a figure more real than any dream she had touched. His face was tired, lined with grease and dust, but his eyes carried warmth she had always felt in his voice. Now she could see them, brown and steady, watching her with hope. Tears ran down her cheeks. Her hands reached forward, brushing Aaron's face carefully. "You are real," she whispered, her voice breaking. Aaron's throat tightened, but he nodded. "Yes, Lyra, I am real." She laughed, the sound strange even to her own ears, high and shaky. Everything looked new, even the broken pieces of metal shining with rain. She stared at her hands, thin and marked with scars, but they were hers, finally hers to see. She whispered, "I can see the world." Aaron smiled faintly, but his chest carried both joy and fear. He had given her a gift, but it was also a risk. If the colony discovered her now, they would not call her a demon in the dark. They would call her something worse, a secret that should not exist. For days, Aaron returned to her with more food, and each time, Lyra showed him what she learned. She pointed at the sky, asking the name of clouds. She touched a flower growing through the cracks and gasped at its color. She laughed at her reflection in a puddle, startled by the girl who stared back at her. Her eyes were still pale, still cloudy, but the glasses bent the light just enough to let her see. Not perfectly, but enough to turn her world into something alive. Aaron taught her words for colors, shapes, stars, even though the colony sky rarely showed them. At night, he pointed upward, describing constellations hidden by smoke. She listened, her eyes wide, trying to imagine what lay beyond. "You will see them one day," he promised. "Not just here, but truly see them." Her heart ached with hope, but danger crept closer. One evening, while Aaron was at the factory, he heard the guard speaking again. "The demon is not hiding anymore." One said, "Someone is helping it." Another spat, "Tomorrow night we burn the whole yard, and at once and for all." Aaron's blood went cold. He worked the rest of his shift in silence, his mind racing. If they came with fire, Lyra would not survive, glasses or not. That night he ran to the scrapyard, his breath heavy, his boots splashing through puddles. Lyra saw him coming and smiled brightly, but his face made her stop, her heart dropping. "What is wrong?" she asked. Aaron grabbed her shoulders gently, his eyes serious. They are coming, he said. Tomorrow night, the patrol will burn this place. Lyra's hands shook, her new vision blurring with tears. No, she whispered. This is my home. I have nowhere else. Aaron pulled her close, his voice low and firm. Then we will find somewhere else. Lyra, you can't stay here. Not anymore. She wanted to fight, wanted to cling to the only place she had ever known. But when she looked around, really looked, she saw what Aaron always knew. The scrapyard was not a home. It was a graveyard. And if she stayed, it would take her too. Her heart broke, but she nodded, her whisper trembling, I trust you. Aaron held her hand, stronger this time. He had saved her with food, with water, with kindness, and now with sight. But tomorrow, he would have to save her life itself. The night stretched long, heavy with silence. Lyra sat awake, staring at the world she had only just learned to see. Every shape, every shadow, every broken machine felt like a memory already fading. And though fear filled her chest, one thought stayed bright. She was no longer blind, no longer alone. She had Aaron, and with him, she had hope. But outside the scrapyard walls, torches were already being prepared. Voices whispered of demons, of curses of fire. The colony would not wait much longer. And when dawn came, the battle for Lyra's life would truly begin. The night before the patrol came, the colony buzzed with restless talk. Men sharpened tools, women whispered prayers, children repeated stories of the demon in the trash. The plan was clear. Tomorrow, the scrapyard would burn. No one cared if something lived inside. No one asked if the demon was truly a curse. Fear was louder than truth, and fear demanded fire. Aaron walked home through the narrow streets, his jaw tight. He carried nothing in his hands, but his mind held the weight of Lyra's life. She had just begun to see the world, just begun to hope, and now the colony wanted to snuff that light out. He could not let it happen. At dawn, he returned to the scrapyard with food, but Lyra did not greet him with her usual trembling smile. She sat still, staring at the broken towers of metal with her pale eyes behind the glasses. Her voice was soft, almost too quiet. I heard them, Aaron. They were close last night. Aaron knelt beside her, his hand firm on her shoulder. They are coming tonight, he said. We need to be ready. Her lip trembled, but she nodded. I will go with you. Aaron thought of hiding her in his home, but he knew the patrol would search every corner if they suspected. He thought of leading her beyond the colony, into the wild lands, but the night was too close, the fire too near. There was no safe place left except escape. But escape meant facing the patrol first. As the sun fell, torches lit the horizon. The patrol marched toward the scrapyard, their boots heavy, their voices sharp. Some carried oil, some carried blades. All carried fear disguised as anger. The colony followed behind, a crowd hungry for spectacle. They wanted to see the demon burn. Aaron stood at the edge of the scrapyard, his heart pounding. Lyra crouched in the shadows, her body tense, her eyes wide. She whispered, they hate me. Aaron shook his head, his voice firm. No, Lyra, they fear you, but tonight we will show them the truth. The patrol entered, their torches casting long shadows over the rusted machines. Bring it out, one shouted. Burn the demon before it curses us all. The crowd echoed, their chants mixing with the hiss of fire. Aaron stepped forward before they could move deeper, his voice loud. Stop, he shouted. There is no demon here. The patrol leader sneered. Then why do you guard this trash heap? Aaron, where are you hiding? Aaron's fists clenched, but he stood tall. I'm hiding nothing, he said. I am protecting someone. Gasps rippled through the crowd, and in the silence that followed, Lyra stepped forward. Her thin frame shook, but she kept walking until the torchlight touched her face. Her glasses gleamed faintly, her pale eyes blinking at the sudden brightness. The crowd recoiled, whispers rising. It's her, it's the demon. But others stared in shock because for the first time, they saw not a monster, but a girl. She is blind, Aaron said firmly. She has lived in your trash since she was small, abandoned, alone, yet you would burn her without ever knowing who she is. The patrol leader spat. She is not human. She does not belong here. Aaron stepped closer, his voice sharp, and yet she feels hunger, fear, and hope just like us. The crowd murmured, some shifting uneasily, others tightening their grip on torches. Lyra's voice broke through the noise, soft but clear. I'm not a curse, she said. I only wanted to live. Her words shook in the air, fragile but strong enough to reach ears that had only heard fear before. But the patrol leader raised his torch higher, his face twisted. Words won't change what she is, he shouted. End this now. He stepped forward, ready to throw fire into the scrapyard. At that moment, the ground shook, a pile of rusted metal collapsing under the weight of years. Sharp beams fell, flames caught on the old oil-soaked floor. The scrapyard erupted into chaos, smoke rising, metal groaning, fire spreading fast. The patrol stumbled back, the crowd screamed. Aaron grabbed Lyra's hand, pulling her close. Stay with me, he shouted, his voice fierce. Her new sight blurred with smoke, but she held on tight. For the first time, she would not face darkness alone. Together, they ran into the fire, not away from it, because inside the blaze was the only path left to prove the truth. The scrapyard burned like a dying star. Flames crawled up broken towers of metal. Oil hissed and popped. Smoke coiled into the sky like black serpents. The crowd stumbled back in fear, their torches no longer weapons, but tiny sparks swallowed by the inferno. The patrol shouted orders, their voices lost under the roar of fire. Inside the blaze, Aaron pulled Lyra forward, his grip strong. Her new sight blurred with smoke and tears, but she did not let go. Every step was a battle, broken beams crashing around them, fire licking the ground. Her heart pounded, not only from fear, but from something stronger. For the first time in her life, she had something to lose. Aaron coughed, his lungs burning, his eyes stinging. He knew the crowd outside, thought them already dead. But he also knew there was one path out, a narrow tunnel through the old cargo bay. He had seen it once in daylight, but he had never walked it. Now, with smoke thick and fire closing in, he could not see the way. He turned to Lyra, his voice rough. Can you see anything? She blinked through the smoke, the glasses cracked but still bending light. Shapes swam before her eyes, shifting but real. She pointed, her voice shaking. That way, Aaron, I see the opening. Aaron stared at her, hope flaring. The girl who once lived in endless darkness was now guiding him through the flames. They stumbled forward, beams falling close, heat biting at their skin. Every time Aaron faltered, Lyra pulled him onward. Her thin arms trembling, but her will unbroken. She shouted directions, her voice cutting through the roar. Left, now straight, watch your step. Aaron obeyed, trusting her sight, trusting her courage. At last, they burst through the narrow gap, stumbling into the cold night air. The crowd gasped as the two figures emerged from fire, not as victims but as survivors. Aaron bent over, coughing hard, his clothes singed, his face streaked with soot. Beside him stood Lyra, her pale eyes glowing behind the cracked glasses, her chest rising with breath, but her frame tall. For the first time, the colony saw her not as a demon, not as trash, but as a girl who walked out of flames. The patrol leader stepped forward, anger twisting his face. This changes nothing, he shouted. She is still not one of us. But his words sounded weak now, drowned by the murmurs of the crowd. They had seen her courage, seen her lead a human through fire. They had seen her survive what none of them would dare. And whispers began to rise, not of curses, but of miracles. Aaron lifted his head, his voice hoarse but steady. You called her a demon, he said, but she is the reason I am alive. He turned to Lyra, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. She deserves life, just like us. Maybe more, because she has fought for it every single day. The crowd shifted, some ashamed, some moved, some silent. A child's voice broke the quiet, small but clear. She's not scary. Heads turned, hearts wavered, and the first crack appeared in the wall of fear. Lyra stood tall despite her trembling legs. Her voice was soft but strong. I do not want to harm anyone. I only want to see the world. I only want to live. The colony listened, and in her words, they heard not a curse, but truth. The patrol leader tried to speak again, but his own men lowered their torches, their eyes uncertain. For the first time, the fire did not answer fear. It answered courage. That night, the scrapyard was gone, burned to ash. But from its ruins rose something new. Aaron and Lyra walked away together, not as outcast and savior, but as companions. The blind girl who once crawled through trash had found sight, hope, and a place in the world. And the human who once walked alone had found a reason to fight. The colony would take time. Fear did not vanish in a single night. But whispers of the trash demon faded, replaced by stories of the girl who walked out of fire. Stories of the human who stood by her, who gave her sight and gave her life. And though Lyra's vision was not perfect, every blurry star she saw was brighter than the darkness she had lived in. Every step beside Aaron was proof that even in the coldest corners of the universe, kindness could spark a miracle. Sometimes, it takes only one act of courage to change a story. Sometimes, it takes only one human to change a life. And sometimes, it takes a blind girl in the trash to remind an entire world what hope truly looks like.